ever find yourself stuck in a loop of thoughts, feeling like you're trying to solve a problem and getting nowhere? You think you're analyzing the situation to death, but instead it feels like you're just spinning your wheels without any real progress. This kind of mental struggle can feel frustrating and exhausting, leaving you mentally drained and no closer to a solution. I'm Dr. Tracey Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. Today, I want to talk about something that many of us struggle with: overthinking versus problem solving. Knowing the difference between the two is important not only for our mental well being, but also for making effective decisions. When we confuse overthinking with problem solving, we often end up stuck, feeling more anxious, or overwhelmed. So let's first look at overthinking. Overthinking is when you find yourself stuck in a loop of excessive thoughts about a problem or a situation without moving toward a solution. You might replay conversations in your head, dissect every detail, or imagine countless what if scenarios, all in an attempt to avoid making mistakes or to try and control every possible outcome. However, this kind of thinking doesn't lead to clarity or resolution. Instead, it often leads to feeling more anxious, overwhelmed, or paralyzed with indecision. Now let's look at problem solving. Problem solving is a focused and structured approach to addressing a specific issue with the aim of finding a solution. Unlike overthinking, which is often driven by fear and uncertainty, problem solving is about being goal-oriented. It involves clearly identifying the problem, brainstorming potential solutions, and then taking actionable steps toward resolving the issue. Problem solving has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You start by defining what you need to solve, gathering the necessary information, and then you work through a plan. The focus is on moving forward rather than rehashing and revisiting things. So when you're in problem solving mode, you're taking practical steps toward a resolution, and then there's a sense of progress, even if it's slow progress. So how can you tell when you're overthinking? Here are some common signs. You find yourself replaying the same scenarios in your mind without coming to a decision or a resolution. After thinking about a problem, you feel more stuck, anxious, or mentally drained than when you started. Your thoughts focus more on what ifs and worst case scenarios than on practical, actionable solutions. And these signs indicate that your thinking isn't moving forward. Instead, it's looping back on itself, leading to the frustration and helplessness. What makes this happen? A few things are fear and uncertainty and emotional triggers. Fear and uncertainty are major drivers of overthinking. Fear of making the wrong decision, fear of the unknown, and even fear of what others might think can all trigger overthinking. Being consumed with these fears can make you analyze every possible outcome and every potential risk, leading to what some people call analysis paralysis. This is where you're so overwhelmed by all the possibilities that you end up doing nothing at all. When it comes to uncertainty, people who lean toward an anxious temperament often have a much lower tolerance for uncertainty. And if this is you, not knowing an answer or an outcome feels very unsettling. And this uncertainty intolerance is closely tied to the need to have control over your circumstances. Some people are just wired to need more granular control over things, while others are fine going with the flow and just seeing what happens. The more you need to control, the more anxious you can become with uncertainty, and the more likely you are to get caught up in thought loops about what-if scenarios. So those are the fear and anxiety drivers. Then there are emotional triggers. Past mistakes, perfectionism, or self-doubt can make you overanalyze even small decisions. For example, if you've made a mistake in the past, you might overthink similar situations in the future to avoid making the same error again. Or if you need things to be perfect, you can overthink every detail to prevent any chance of failure. Emotions like these can cloud your judgment and keep you stuck in a loop of overthinking. A helpful way to recognize this is to notice when your thoughts are driven by emotions rather than facts. Ask yourself,
Am I thinking this way because it's logical? Or am I responding to a past experience that's no longer relevant, but I'm still thinking about it?
By becoming aware of these signs, triggers, and emotional drivers, you can start to differentiate between when you're genuinely problem solving and when you're overthinking. So let's look at how you can shift from overthinking to productive problem solving. One thing you can do is identify the root of your thoughts. Get clear about what's on your mind. Ask yourself,
What exactly am I trying to solve here?
or
Is this a real problem or just a what-if scenario?
overthinking is often vague and lacks structure, so it's easy to spiral into endless possibilities. Start by pinpointing what's actually bothering you. For example, if you find yourself worrying about an upcoming presentation at work, ask yourself if you're concerned about the content, or if you're worried about how you'll be perceived, or if it's something else entirely. You can break down vague worries into specific, actionable issues by identifying what makes you uneasy. Once you've done that, you can start to focus on what's within your control and then move toward finding a solution. Another strategy is to set time limits on your thinking. Give yourself 15 to 20 minutes to brainstorm possible solutions to a specific problem. Once the timer goes off, it's time to move into action mode. This approach works because it sets a boundary around your thinking, preventing it from drifting into overthinking. It also encourages decisiveness and action. Often, when you know that you have limited time, you'll be more likely to focus on the more important aspects of a problem rather than getting caught up in irrelevant details. What if you don't come up with a solution in that time period? Then make a note of where you left off or note possibilities that you thought of so that you can pick up where you left off in another timed session. It's often helpful to give yourself a mental break and return to the problem fresh. Another thing you can do is to challenge your thoughts with questions. Overthinking is often driven by assumptions and fears rather than facts. Ask yourself questions like,
What's the worst thing that could happen? Is this thought based on reality, or am I assuming a negative consequence based on my own fears? What is within my control right now?
these questions help ground you in reality and shift your focus from fear based thinking to practical action. They can also help you separate emotional reasoning from logical reasoning, allowing you to make more rational decisions. The last suggestion to break the overthinking cycle is using mindfulness. When you're caught in a thought spiral, mindfulness techniques like focusing on the present moment, deep breathing, or a body scan can help pull you back into the here and now. Overthinking involves dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, so bringing your attention back to the present can be incredibly grounding. A simple mindfulness exercise you can try anywhere is the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. You may have heard of it, but here it is. Acknowledge or name 5 things you can see around you, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This exercise helps interrupt the overthinking loop and brings you back to the present moment where you have more control over your thoughts and actions. And there are lots of grounding exercises that you can do. Another is picking a color and then naming or acknowledging all the objects in the room with that color. I give you a bunch of grounding exercises and other tools to manage your anxiety in my book, Why Am I So Anxious? You can get it wherever books are sold, but I'll have the Amazon link in the description. So let's recap. Overthinking and problem solving are 2 very different mental processes. Overthinking often traps you in a loop of worry and doubt, while problem solving is about moving forward with clarity and purpose. You can break free from the cycle of overthinking by recognizing the signs of overthinking, understanding the role of fear and uncertainty and emotional triggers, and then using strategies like setting time limits and asking the right questions and practicing mindfulness. If you find yourself stuck in thought loops, try using some of these strategies to shift your mindset and start taking actionable steps. The goal isn't to completely stop thinking, but to direct your thoughts in a way that leads you to real solutions. For more tips on managing anxiety and building better mental health habits, watch these 2 videos on managing worry and what it means to have an anxious temperament. Thanks for watching today. See you next time.